Yeah, there's a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral.
Well, what do you mean cover up the cover up? Well, since the 1940s, there's been this very intensive disinformation campaign in the United States and around the world. But in the United States, it's been aimed at citizens to confuse them, to make them think that this topic is a joke. It's been a very comprehensive campaign that's involved the media as well, especially the traditional print media, uh, like papers like the New York Times and the Washington Post, by the way. So there's been this disinformation, misinformation, obfuscation, denial, and ridicule campaign, which has created this enormous stigma. And so the topic has turned into like Tooth Fairy land, Santa Claus, which is why so many skeptics laugh at the topic and have such a hard time even considering the possibility that maybe it's a reality, that maybe it's true. You can thank the disinformation campaign for that. Um, so so they don't want that exposed. They don't want the disinformation campaign exposed. Number one, because that looks very, very, very bad for the United States government. So they'd prefer to just forget about the past and let's just start from 2004 and let's just move forward. And in concert with that, we're going to pretend that we haven't figured out what these things are yet. We're going to call them UAP, and we're going to tell the public we don't know what they are. Maybe they're Chinese, maybe they're Russian, maybe they're US black tech, maybe they're, atmospheric phenomenon, maybe it's air trash or clutter or Midwest geese or what have you. But maybe they're alien spacecraft, but they haven't really publicly stated that very often over the past 6 or 7 years. And the whole point is they're trying to pretend that they haven't figured this out yet. Why? Well, because they're trying to cover up the cover up. They're trying to pretend the last 70, 80 years didn't happen. So the question is, well, why are they doing that? Well, because the potential for blowback is immense. So these are what I mean by the non-disclosure aims. So they want to, number one, they want to cover up the cover up. Number two, they want to minimize public ire, right? Minimize public anger, um, because the public anger would be directed at the government, and public anger would be directed at the military-industrial complex, and public anger would be directed at the aerospace industry, and that's not something any of those entities want to see. Um, they want to minimize litigation. The risk of enormous lawsuits is quite high, and so the goal is if we could minimize public ire and they don't find out about the past and this tremendous cover up that's taken place, and they think we're just figuring this out now. Well, that'll really cut down on the number and amount of lawsuits. Um, they want to they want to minimize the chances that the oil industry is going to fall apart because these craft are not using oil, or gas or coal. They're using what most people call 0 point energy. They're getting their energy from the vacuum of space, from the atmosphere, and it's called free energy for that reason as well. And they know that if that gets out to the public, people might dump their oil stocks. The citizenry all around the world, especially because of the climate crisis, may be calling for free energy to be disseminated to the population. And the oil industry is an enormous industry. It has an enormous amount of influence, and nobody really wants to see it tank. There's also a lot of people who work for the oil industry. They want to minimize any damage to the pharmaceutical industry. Again, right now we use a lot of pills and capsules and tablets. And if some of these genetic technologies, if it's true that the United States has certain alien gifted genetic technologies, when we may be able to treat some of our disease and medical conditions with genetic therapy, then we may have a lessen our dependence on the pharmaceutical industry. That's not good for them. So they want to try to protect the pharmaceutical industry. Um, there's a big fear that things will never be the same. There's a big fear that governments will lose power, that citizenry will lose respect for their governments because of the cover up. And B, citizens may look to these much more advanced beings um, for solutions to their problems instead of looking at their governments. This is something that Lou Elizondo brought up during his somber speech. He specifically stated that there was a fear inside of governments that they would lose power, that they just wouldn't be as important anymore. Um, so that's a key aim of this disclosure process. Governments do not want to lose power, and so when you take everything all together, all of those non-disclosure aims, and you think about our Congress and how they're going to be acting moving forward, things start to make a lot more sense, right? I mean, who is in the pockets of Congress? The pharmaceutical industry, the oil industry. Is Congress part of the government? Of course they are. Congress doesn't want to lose power. So it's important to think of these factors when you're watching Congress and wondering why are they acting the way they're acting. Something else to keep in mind is acclamation. The word acclamation is very important. So the way that this whole campaign is set up is it's been a scheduled dissemination of information over time, a gradual release of information that's been designed to acclimate the United States and the world um, without causing ontological shock during the acclimation phase, so during the past 6 or 7 years, and also during this disclosure phase that we've just begun, and then after disclosure. So that's such an important concept to understand because a lot of people say, well, what's going on now? Arrow knows what's going on. Why are they lying? Congress knows what's going on. Why are they playing stupid? Well, acclimation and ontological shock, I think, are huge factors for why they're going to be playing stupid and why they're going to try to keep this, you know, this discovery process, they're going to try to keep it controlled. What they don't want to do is they don't want the door to swing wide open and have all these whistleblowers go to the media and dump all their information out at once, because that can cause ontological shock and that can cause all the other problems that we talked about that this entire campaign is designed to avoid, all the non-disclosure aims. So that's going to be a big factor moving forward when we watch this play out. Another thing to think about is if this is a scheduled dissemination, which is John Ramirez's term for it, he's the one that said that, then there's an end date to it, meaning there's a date in the future that's already been decided where the big official announcement is going to be made that some UAP represent non-human intelligence with extraterrestrial origins. Why extraterrestrial when it's probably uh, a number of different origin points? Because that's what's most psychologically comfortable for everyone. That's what we've been acclimated to for 60 or 70 years in Hollywood with all the movies, all the literature. It's always been about extraterrestrial. So that's what they want to go for, first, the preliminary announcement. And so who would make this announcement? It would have to be somebody very official so that people would believe what they're saying. So an official disclosure, in my opinion, would come from the president, Arrow, the president's UAP task force. I didn't mention that, but the president has a UAP task force as well. That was announced after the United Nations, NASA, I'd say, or China. I'd say that would be official if they said some UAP represent non-human intelligences with extraterrestrial origins. Anyone else who tries to make some kind of announcement, um, I don't think it's going to be as official, and I don't think it's going to be as readily accepted. So let's just say for a second, let's pretend that the date that was planned for this announcement was 2025, right? A lot of people think 2025 or 2026 is the timetable for official disclosure, right? If that's true, now you start to understand why they're trying to put the brakes on this thing. It doesn't mean they're trying to stop it in its tracks, which is what a lot of people think. Oh, they're trying to stop it right now before it comes out. It's too late for that, right? It's too late for that, and there isn't enough evidence that they tried to stop it along the way, right? We know that Lou had problems, that he was gone after, you know, but that may have been something intra-departmental. He never told his boss that he was running a UFO program, right? So that was a reason for his boss Gary Reed to be angry and want retribution. But no one's gone after Chris Mellon, who's been headlining the disclosure effort. No one's gone after Gary Nolan. No one's gone after John Ramirez. No one's gone after Eric Davis. No one's gone after Kirsten Gillibrand, Marco Rubio, or Mark Warner. No one's gone after Andre Carson. In other words, none of these people have been gone after. So if there really was this huge effort to try to prevent any disclosure from happening, from the admission that there were non-human intelligences interacting with our planet, well, it certainly doesn't look like that's the case, because we haven't seen any actual evidence of that. Instead, what I think is more likely to be happening behind the scenes is there are a lot of different factions fighting with each other over how much information is going to come out, how much of this information is going to get to Congress, how much of the information is going to come out to the public, how much of the alien technology is going to be owned by the aerospace industry, who right now has total ownership of it, versus how much of it is going to be owned by the public. These are the fights that are going on right now, and other fights that are going on are how quickly is this information going to be disseminated, over what time span. Are we going to do disclosure over 3, 4, 5 years, or are we going to do disclosure over 15 to 20 years? Because some of the information is quite shocking, and they're trying to they want the civilization to keep running the way it's been running. The people who have the power, the wealth, and status, they don't want that to change. So they want to do it. They want to dribble the information out so slowly that it won't even necessarily feel like disclosure is happening, aside from the initial announcement. And so there's a lot of battles going on about that. And then there's a faction that says, no, we have a climate crisis. We have the risk of nuclear conflagration and World War III. We want to get a lot more information out. We want to try to prevent a World War III, and we want to get free energy out, a lot faster, instead of waiting a generation, to start dribbling it in.